Friday afternoon in the Obama administration is turning out to be a really busy time of the week. Recent Friday afternoons have brought with them big fat news stories like the Obama administration plans to leave between 30,000 and 50,000 troops in Iraq as a residual force. Another Friday afternoon, the Obama Justice Department plans to continue President Bush's policies regarding prisoners at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Both of those stories, pretty big deal news items, liable to evoke some negative reaction. Both let out to the press late on Friday afternoons. Luckily, at least in one sense, we here at The Rachel Maddow Show are on the air live Friday nights. It is less than ideal for the social lives of the Rachel Maddow Show staff, but we do catch Friday night news dumps all the time. Today's surprise news item crossing the late afternoon wires was this, quote, U.S. Justice Department drops enemy combatant as basis for holding Guantanamo detainees. Wow, how come they saved this one for a Friday afternoon? The term enemy combatant was not exactly invented by the Bush administration, but it got popular like a high school sophomore with a car during the years 2001 to 2008. The Bush administration used the term when they were in need of some pseudo-legal explanation/justification for lots of unprecedented things they wanted to do to human beings in the post-9/11 era. The truly whack implication of this meant to scare Americans about terrorists term, enemy combatant, was that it was used to indicate that the president now claimed the power to take anyone off the street, anywhere, in any country, including this one, to declare that person an enemy combatant, and by virtue of having said those two magic words, enemy combatant, to incarcerate that person indefinitely, whether that means for the rest of his or her life or just until the end of the war on terror. They could be incarcerated without charges and without trial indefinitely. The term enemy combatant essentially gave the American president the right to disappear people. Now, one way to understand the impact of this is to understand the people who have been subjected to this, who have been designated enemy combatants. And we do know some of their names, from Jose Padilla to Ali Al-Mari. Jose Padilla, U.S. citizen, Ali Al-Mari, a legal U.S. resident, also Yasser Hamdi. What happened to those people who were designated enemy combatants? It's complicated and in a lot of ways awful. They are complicated people. It has complicated their complicated and in many cases seemingly awful lives. The impact of the use of the enemy combatant designation on people who have been designated enemy combatant has been hard to follow, sometimes difficult to swallow, and it is ongoing. But the real existence of the enemy combatant designation, as adopted by the Bush administration, is that it changed the American government. It changed the American presidency and took away some of what makes America different from, and frankly, I'm not ashamed to say it, better than many other countries. Giving one person this type of power, giving anyone in America the power to supersede the law, changed, in some fundamental sense, the very idea of what America means. And as of this afternoon, that is, at least sort of, now over. Joining us now to explain the over and the sort of is Jonathan Turley, professor of constitutional law at George Washington University Law School. Professor Turley, I'm sorry I tripped over your title. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, Rachel.
Nice to see you. Is the way that I have summarized the Bush administration's use of the term enemy combatant accurate? Am I stating that correctly?
No, you did, and it's impossible to overstate it because it was an absolute assertion of power. And the president literally did claim and did actually act upon the very thing you described. Jose Padilla, for example, was taken on U.S. soil and stripped of all of his rights, denied access to a lawyer, denied access to the courts, and told that he would stay in detention indefinitely as long as George Bush felt he should.
What is going to change about the enemy combatant designation, about the claimed powers of the presidency, and about the lives of these people who've been designated enemy combatant after this proclamation today?
Well, that's the problem. This statement was actually made in court as part of a filing to preserve the status quo, to actually continue what George Bush did. It said that we're not going to call them enemy combatants, but you can call them zucchini if you want. But the fact is they will remain in Guantanamo Bay without charge. And that's the problem for civil libertarians, that what the Obama administration has said is that we do believe, like George Bush, that we're at war with al-Qaeda and that we reserve the right to hold people indefinitely when we believe that they fit the category that we are defining. But when asked, what does it mean? What is it you're defining? What does substantial assistance, for example, to the Taliban mean? They said, well, we really can't define it at this time. We'll just do that case by case.
Is it the whole reason that they started using the term enemy combatant in this way to give them the purported legal right to hold people indefinitely? If you take away that designation but still claim the right to hold people indefinitely, under what law are you claiming that? And is that any less lawless than it was under the Bush administration?
Well, I think there's the rub. And, for the purposes of these detainees and for civil libertarians, this is rhetorical. And the Obama administration, as in a number of recent court actions, is trying to preserve and, in fact, defend what George Bush did. It's just that they want to say they're doing it on a different principle. But it's hard to take the high ground when you're not moving from the ground that your predecessor held. Now, in fairness to President Obama, I think the most significant thing about today's filing is he said that he would no longer rely upon his authority as commander-in-chief. He would no longer assert that he has the inherent authority for this type of power. Now, that's a meaningless difference for the detainees. They'll stay in the same cell, in the same conditions indefinitely. But that commander-in-chief assertion of power by George Bush was the foundation for many of the worst abuses, including the torture program.
Doesn't that also give people who have been challenging indefinite detention, people who've been representing Guantanamo prisoners, for example, doesn't it also give them a different grounds on which to challenge what the administration is doing legally? If the administration was defending it on the grounds before of the inherent power of the commander-in-chief, that is no longer the basis of their claim, does this open up whole new avenues for people to challenge the fact that they're being held this way?
Well, I think that that's the great hope, that there is a feeling that that President Obama is not going to make the same extremist arguments that we saw with President Bush. But I also think that we need to hold President Obama to the same standard. The fact is, he is asserting the ability to hold people indefinitely without charge, based upon a standard he won't define, and something that he said basically he'll know it when he sees it. If George Bush did that, and he did do that, we're very critical, and we need to be equally critical with President Obama. What he should do is charge them as terrorists if they're terrorists. If there's evidence that they are a threat to the nation and have done things against us, we need to charge them. And the great burden about being a nation committed to the rule of law is that you charge people and you prove their guilt. It's a great luxury in some perverse way to be al-Qaeda, where you can just say, I think you're what I fear the most, and I'll just put a bullet in your head. Or you're the person I hate the most. But we're a nation committed to the rule of law. And so we have to bring charges and we have to prove them. And the idea of indefinite detention without charge obviously should be obnoxious to anyone who believes in the rule of law.
Jonathan Turley, professor of constitutional law at George Washington University Law School. Thank you, as always, for your clarity on this, and thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Rachel.